Hello everyone, welcome back to Leicester Fan TV. This is the Fox's Focus show where we're discussing everything Leicester. We'll be discussing the Chelsea game, but I'm joined with Simon. Hello Simon, thank you for joining me.
Evening Jono, how are you mate?
Not bad. So me and Simon have had a chat and we are both bored to death of doing this show week in, week out, talking how crap we are and saying we played really bad last week and we're going to play really bad the next week. So we've had an idea. We're gonna have what we call the positive show. We are going to, for not all the show. We'll talk about the Chelsea game and towards the end. But we feel like I want to bring back some happy memories. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much doom and gloom any two men can take. So let's reminisce a little bit as well and try and mix it up.
So we want to get you guys involved. We want you to, someone will throw some questions at each other and want to hear you guys' opinion. So the first off, I was born in 1995, and since then, all the best, I've experienced us winning the championship 2 times. We've won the League Cup twice. We've gotten FA Cup, Premier League, promotion back to the Premier League last year. After all of them, so since I was born, that's not just that's quite a few trophies considering a lot of other clubs like in the UK don't win that many trophies. So what would you guys say is your most favourite trophy? Now, people might say Premier League, but my favourite trophy that we've won is the FA Cup. The reason being is because I was with my mate watching it on the TV, and what I loved about it was after COVID, I was watching my family on the Zoom because we couldn't, we're all watching it together, and then we enjoyed that celebration together, and it was like that release of COVID and getting to celebrate something big. That was my most favourite trophy win.
Is it my turn?
Yeah. Yeah, it's your turn.
All right. I mean, the obvious thing to say here is obviously us winning the Premier League is a once in a lifetime experience. I don't think we'll see that again in our lives. I certainly hope we do, but it's unlikely. The footballing gods were on our side that season for lots and lots of reasons, and the formula came together with Pearson building the kind of foundation that Ranieri put the cherry on. So it's difficult to look past that. But if I was going to look past it, and of course, this is an opinions thing. There's no right or wrong answer.
Nope.
I really enjoyed the 13-14 promotion season from the Championship.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think we scored about 104 points that season. Was it 102? There we go. Just correct myself. Vardy scoring goals for fun. Nigel Pearson as the manager, who I still absolutely love. I think he's a special man for me at our club. It just felt like we were riding a real kind of crest of a wave into the Premier League, and it that was back in the days where we kind of lived in the doldrums for quite a while, and having that sort of season was something special. So I personally really took a lot of enjoyment out of that season and winning the Championship that season.
Yeah, well, Nigel Pearson was the original. Well, I think was the epicenter of us winning the Premier League. It was him who got that team together, who rallied us to not only survive but inspired us to continue that form into the Premier League winning season. And without him, I don't think it would have happened either. We all sing Vichai's name, but I think he was as important in that. And I'll lead on to another one. Is we've all right now. Realistically, is under a lot of pressure. Everyone's going back to Simon Cooper, wanting Simon Cooper back as a as a manager, as a manager. But what are you guys' favourite manager? Now, for me, it has to be Claudio Ranieri. I mean, he was just a man. It was a guy's guy. He was lovely. He was lovely to to speak to. He was honest, pure back to basics football. Dealy ding, dealy dong. One of the best quotes of the Premier League history, and the fact that he was classed as the Tinkerman to win a trophy after being at so many clubs and everyone doubting him was just a magical moment. So yeah, I think my favourite manager was Ranieri.
Okay, good shout. I mean, it's difficult again to look past. He won the club to Premier League. I mean, that doesn't really get much better than that.
No.
I was always a little bit sad about the way Ranieri's time at Leicester ended. He didn't get masses. Okay, fine. Things were starting to turn a little bit, but he wasn't given a lot of time to turn it around, and I felt that was maybe a little bit soon, especially given what he'd achieved for the club, very recently before that. For me, there's two others in the mix for me. One I've already mentioned, which is Nigel Pearson, and the other one's Martin O'Neill, obviously, for the League Cup wins, the European football, and all the rest of that. Going back a little bit deeper in time, I mean, some people would say Jock Wallace is in that mix as well, for what he did at the club. I suppose it depends on your generation and what you remember, what you lived, and all that type of stuff. For me, I can't look past Nigel Pearson. I absolutely agree with you that I think he was instrumental and almost a bigger piece of the jigsaw in that Premier League victory than Ranieri was. Ranieri came in and it was Pearson's staff, and largely almost all Pearson's squad that won that league title. He'd installed an ethic into our club right through it, which I think is one of the elements of our current setup, which is really, really desperate to get back to, which is effort, desire, achievement, non-acceptance of second best. Pearson was quite brutal at times with some of the players when he felt like they weren't giving it all or listening to him, and I think you have to be. It's a generational thing, because some would say nowadays you can't get away with that in football, but I don't agree. I think players want to be inspired. I think they need someone that draws the line and says that's not acceptable.
David Moyes at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I can't look past Nigel Pearson. I think he's an absolute giant of our club and a legend. Albeit, I have to tip a hat to Martin O'Neill, and because that was a special time.
It was. Did he get us to 4 League Cup finals in the late 90s, or was it 3? I think it was 4 or 3.
2 from memory.
We won 2, but I think we got into 4 finals. I think we lost 2 finals and won 2 finals in the late 90s.
All right, yeah, I'm getting confused. You're right. Yeah, if you're talking about getting to, it's a different story. But yeah.
So, please like and follow the show. All the social media things at the bottom. Please give us a follow. Let's go through some of the comments. Mike says, Nige, definitely. Claudio close second, as you said. I thought last season was great. It got us over the shock of relegation. We didn't have the torture of the playoffs to go through. It's too bad what's happened since this moment. Yeah, I thought, even though last season when the championship was great, every week was talking about how good we were, and, we had a good FA Cup run. It was a great season last time. Andy agrees with you that Nigel was the foundation. I agree. I don't think Ranieri was a fraud. I just think he went back to football basics and just utilised the best for the team. But
yeah, I mean, you've got to ask yourself this question. Don't forget the season before Ranieri comes in, the Great Escape occurred. We were right on our backside in the Premier League halfway through the season. It was absolutely to Pearson's credit that he turned that around. But I can remember when all of that business went off in Thailand that summer, and for non-footballing reasons, Pearson ended up out of a job and Ranieri was employed. I certainly wasn't sat that summer thinking, Christ, we're going to win the league. No. I was actually, to start with, when I first heard it, I was worried. I was worried that we were going to go backwards. And I think it's that formula, isn't it? It's that we got in that perfect situation where Pearson laid all those foundations at the club, and then Ranieri came in with his experience and knowledge of the game and just gave it a bit of finesse and finished the job off.
Exactly.
So they're both partly responsible for us winning the league, is what I'm saying. You can't say Ranieri wasn't.
No. Michael says Pearson's done nothing, and that is an absolute lie. He's not won us a trophy, but he's built the
No, we won the championship
yeah.
Under Nigel Pearson, so that's incorrect.
And
League One.
Yes, and League One.
Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. Stevie Howard and that goal at the King Power Stadium.
Nigel Pearson's % his team won us the leagues. He installed commitment, faith, and confidence, which again led into the Premier League winning season. Now, this is a slightly different question. What was your favourite time? Like, I think era of Leicester City, and I'm going to go with something a bit different. I'm going to go with this photo here. I think this for me was some of the, felt really proud of being a Leicester supporter that season. I mean, hearing that music, the Champions League music for the first time at the King Power Stadium, was just so emotional. And not just that, we got to the quarter-finals of the Champions League. Buffon stated that Juventus do not want to play against Leicester because we were a tough opponent. That for me made me feel so proud to hear that music at the King Power Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that if you've lived the last 10 years, you've seen the best of Leicester City's of all eras. We won the Premier League, we won the FA Cup, we won the Community Shield, we've been in Europe multiple seasons. It doesn't really get any better than that. And, if you kick that back, to when I was talking about when Pearson picked the club up back, years and over 10 years ago, no one would ever have dreamed that Leicester would have done that in the times that were to come. So you absolutely can't look beyond, the kind of the most recent era. And I think also that's why, especially for the younger generation of Leicester fans, what's going on at the club now is harder to stomach. They haven't lived what the likes of I've lived, many years ago when we were in the doldrums and the ground was half empty and all of that stuff, and the expectations are much lower. We're coming down the other side at the minute, unfortunately, of that golden era, and that's difficult, I think, for some of our fans to kind of acclimatise to and accept.
It is sad, and Damien says, "Do you think we'll ever hit those highs again?" Well, to be honest, if I wasn't, involved as a fan during those times, I'm guessing you, Simon, when you went through those times, you never thought you would see Leicester win a trophy, let alone, you know what I mean?
I don't know about a trophy. I mean, I think Leicester's always had that kind of unpredictable experience, way of it. It's one thing that's great about our club. It's very, really dull. It might be for the wrong reasons at times that it's not dull, but it's never, it's never really dull. We've never been a club that's kind of linked. Yeah, a bit like if you watch Preston North End, for example, at the minute, they kind of live in the middle of the Championship, and they have done for quite a while, and that must be quite. Well, it's a bit. We've never been that sort of club that just kind of hangs around somewhere, which is good, because as fans, good, bad, or indifferent, there's always something to talk about. There's always something to get your teeth into, and it's not mundane. But yeah, the expectations at the club pre this last 10, 12 years were completely different to what they are now. And I think, as I say, I'm repeating myself, but that's why, this is even more of a bitter pill to swallow. Now we're going through this season.
It always goes back. Like, we're trying to figure out the past. I mean, the past and happiness, but always brings us back to the current, doesn't it? It's bad, but Palace have ended on almost the same points every season for years. And I've always said this to people, and people say, like, oh, like, it must be awful supporting Leicester. I'm like, yeah, we're in an awful time now, but I'll always love my club because, as you said, it's never boring. And look at Brentford, look at, teams like that. They're Wolves, they're just going to sit 12th to 14th every season, every like established Premier League clubs finishing 14th every season. I'm like, I'd rather go get relegated, but then have a really good Championship season and celebrate than just sit mid-table in the Premier League all my life.
Yeah, I mean, the expectations at the clubs you just mentioned. I mean, you look at that nucleus of teams that are kind of in the middle of the Premier League at the minute, you know, and they're not teams. If you kick it back 12, 14 years, you'd expect to be saying this about. But Brentford, Bournemouth, you know, you go back 15 years, you wouldn't expect to be having this conversation about them being kind of secure Premier League clubs. No. Brighton as well is another one that have cemented themselves in the top flight. Crystal Palace, a bit more of a yo-yo club, kind of Championship and Premier League in and out, but they've established themselves as a Premier League club this last few seasons. But their goals and expectations every summer will be, you know, to number one, keep in that league, and number two, you know, to incrementally, you would suggest, grow on what they did the season before, try and improve. But it's very hard. I mean, I always remember thinking about Charlton like this, that they had a few seasons similar to the clubs I've just mentioned in the Premier League. But they just, you watch them disintegrate, because when you're setting your stall out every season to finish 8th or 10th or whatever, it's difficult to keep motivating the same players to lose and to lose a certain amount of games every season and expect that to be the case. It's difficult to maintain that and keep the same focus and stamina. So invariably, those clubs we just talked about will end up eventually falling back out of the league. They'll make some bad decisions, probably like we have in the transfer market. They'll spend on players that don't contribute to the team, that cost them a lot of money in transfers and wages, and they'll end up getting consumed by it, like in a similar way to we have of late. You know, it is, those teams can't do that. But I'd much rather be us, personally, my opinion. I'm not saying, I'm not disrespecting anyone else's club or fans, than them, because you know, we will come back, and it might take some time, because in my opinion,
massive hole.
Yeah, the rebuild job we need at the minute, I think, is quite significant. But we will come back. Absolutely, we will come back one day.
And it wouldn't be Leicester, would it? It wouldn't be Leicester, like Simon says, if we just sat 10th to 14th every season. It wouldn't be Leicester. It wouldn't be Leicester. Now, before we move on to the Chelsea game, I want everyone to put in the comments, who is your all-time, not let's say the best, but your favourite player? Like, this is, you can go from back to Gordon Banks, you can Gary Lineker, all the way up to, you know, the current team. I'm going to go, you know, vanilla. I'm going to go Vardy. I can't take, you just can't. He's Mr. Leicester. He's, you know, broken mad records. He came from Halifax to Premier League winner. England, you know, an England player. He's just, you know, iconic. He's just not just a good player. He's iconic. You know, coming on at half time, drinking a Red Bull at half time against Spurs in this season and scoring the equaliser. He's just an absolute icon, and I can't take away from Vardy. And people, Ray's put in Taggart, Frankie, Worthington, Keith, Cambiasso. Yeah, absolute icons. What was yours be, Simon?
Well, you know, Vardy's the obvious one. I mean, it would be difficult to argue that he's not the greatest player that's ever pulled on a Leicester shirt and ran on the pitch. You know, I would challenge anyone to in a debate if they told me any different. I think, you know, for what the club's achieved in terms of trophies and success while he's been at the club, his statistics, his passion and commitment to our club, and, you know, and his selflessness at times, you know, especially recently when the service he's been getting this season, apart from a few games, has just been dire. But he doesn't stop running, even at his age. He doesn't stop trying to challenge and win the ball back. He's trying to set the tone. Everything about that man, you know, he's Leicester legend and greatest ever player, obviously. But there are personal opinions in this, in terms of players that you just remember fondly. And whilst I'd absolutely, you know, agree with you that Vardy is the pinnacle, there are a couple. I mean, Gary Lineker for me is one of my favourite ever players, and not just for Leicester but also for England. I've got, you know, of his time, he's a different type of player generationally. That sort of player doesn't suit maybe modern football these days, but he was outstanding for me, and he's a massive Leicester fan and hugely, and let's not forget that in times in that time of need, he also put his hand in his pocket and helped the club stay in business. So, I know that's not a football thing, but I give him respect for that as well. The other player that I've got a real soft spot for is a little bit of a more obscure one, and that's Lloyd Dyer, Jono.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved him when he was playing for us, and his energy and desire and drive, especially in that 13-14 season I mentioned, he gave me a lot of pleasure watching him during his time at Leicester. And of course, we can go down the Muzzies at Steve Walsh, Peter Shilton, Kasper Schmeichel, N'Golo Kante. We can go on and on and on. Riyad Mahrez. I mean, there are some absolutely incredible players there. Keith Weller, I think someone mentioned him. Was a great player for Leicester. But
Andy put Keith Weller.
Yeah, it's a personal thing, isn't it? And I remember Lloyd Dyer with a lot of fondness. But I'm not saying he's the greatest player ever played for Leicester, by the way. But I really enjoyed watching him play.
Like Ian's put Jim Melrose. These are players way before my time. I don't remember any of these names at all. But I guess that's Cambiasso. I'm guessing that's that. But that was
Cambiasso was only at our club for a very fleeting amount of time, wasn't he? He wasn't around for long.
The impact he had was just immense, wasn't it?
That great escape and the impact he had was, he was key that season.
He was key. It's now time, Simon, to end the positives and go back into reality. And someone did put a comment. Here we go. We'll start with Stephen's comment. We can win this game against Chelsea since they have a game in the Conference League. They've just played their conference game and they've won 2-1 against Copenhagen. I've seen posts and rumours that Ruud has had an argument with Jamie Vardy. So I don't know if those rumours are true. There were rumours that who was that? Who was the player who had arguments? Was it Mavrididi who had arguments with Ruud, and that turned up?
Buonanotte was the one that I heard. That was why he wasn't playing apparently, because he'd had an argument with the manager. I mean, these are rumours, aren't they? Ultimately,
yeah. So I'm not going far into it, but going into this game, well, we'll go back to Stephen's comment. Do you think it's going to be like an advantage that they've travelled to Denmark?
Well, the first thing to say is, as we said off camera before we started, they've got 2 full first teams if they want to pick them. So, I'm sure he's changed things up a little bit tonight, and I'm sure he'll change that team at the weekend when he plays us. He's got that luxury of, having, a couple of players at least in every position. So that's not going to, whilst they have travelled, I don't think that's a big factor come the weekend in terms of when they play us. I don't see that. And as I said to you earlier, it's interesting to see that Dewsbury Hall was playing for Chelsea tonight.
We're saying off stream as well how Dewsbury Hall, he's only been playing in Europe competitions. He's not been playing in the Premier League, and they've got such big rotation. But again, I would feel that the only positive is Chelsea have been very none and void up front in recent weeks. I don't think they've been very effective, but they're going up against a team that is the most ineffective front at the moment in the Premier League. So it's either going to be, for me, a really dull game, or Chelsea's going to annihilate us. One of the two.
I mean, there's several factors here. I mean, the first one is that Enzo Maresca knows a lot of those players, and he knows them intimately from his season with the club. So there's the first thing. This isn't, he's got a little bit maybe more knowledge about the strengths and weaknesses of some of our players than other managers. Number two, as you just alluded to, it was probably pre-electricity now since we last scored a goal in a league game. So, we're not exactly prolific up front. In addition to that, our defence is pretty leaky. Let me just drop that in there, Mike just saying there that Cole Palmer hasn't scored in ages. Well, that's an ominous thought, Mike, because if he's due, then I would suggest our defence are going to serve him some opportunities this weekend. It's difficult. I mean, there was an article in the Times at the weekend. I don't know if you read it or not, but it was going through this whole Vestergaard was allowed to bring his dog to the training ground and stay there.
I've seen that.
And then it went on to say that some of the players had a big row with one of the coaches, and so on and so on and so on. The whole thing looks. I mean, you would suggest if a major national journalist is printing that in a Sunday publication, there's got to be some foundation to it, and if even half of that is true, it's quite clear that the environment currently with amongst our squad and our management and our coaches is not particularly healthy, and I think maybe that alludes to a little bit of the way that we're seeing performances play out at the minute.
Well, Bailey's alluded to, I feel like managers don't get the respect from players they used to, and I don't feel no players respected any manager since Brendan Rodgers in the season we won the FA Cup. I've not seen any players really. Maybe Enzo, maybe under Enzo, but it just seems it's just such disarray between the club's relationship between the fans and the club, the managers and the players. It just seems very disconnected at the moment through all out, and it just isn't. There's no unity at the moment, and it just feels like we're just. No, it's just like having a constant argument. It's just not a nice atmosphere.
Yeah, and I mean, you made a comment earlier in this show that people are wishing Steve Cooper was still the manager, and I'll be honest with you, I'll hold my hands up. I wasn't a big Steve Cooper fan, but if someone asked me it was either him or him, I'd pick Cooper right now, because I think he had more of an understanding for this type of situation than Ruud van Nistelrooy's got.
Yeah,
but let's be honest, they're both bad appointments. As managers, neither of them. If you were writing a list of managers in the summer who you wanted to be the Leicester City manager for this season, for me personally, neither of them would have been in the top 5.
No.
So ultimately, whilst yes, probably Cooper did have a bit more of an idea about what it's like to scrap and try and get 3 points at the bottom of the league, I don't think either of them were the right pick. And like I say, we sold Dewsbury all for what in the summer? 30 million quid, was it? 40 million quid?
40 million.
And then we spent 20 something million of that on Oliver Skipp. I mean, we also spent 3.5 million of it on paying Edouard's wages.
I told you, if you buy Spurs players, you will bottle it. We bought Wiggins, we bought Skipp, and we've bottled it. Yeah, it's just. As the comment earlier alluded to the signings, and we just, we didn't recruit when we were up on the high of winning the FA Cup, win the Premier League, we're on an absolute high. But then the season after we came 8th, that was the warning sign that things, from being 5th twice to finishing 8th, everyone was really unhappy. Everyone was quite annoyed. Brendan was under a lot of pressure. That was the start, of the collapse of the club. I think we're under an illusion how good we were, and even though we had all those players, it just kind of fell down from there.
We got beat by Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup. I remember it well. Danny Ward was in goal. I think we were 3 down at half time. I can't remember the exact how it worked out, but it was a bad game. And I can remember Rodgers after that game saying on television, I think it was on the BBC that game from memory, that the club needed a reset. We're going back quite a while now when you think about it, and those sorts of times for me were when things started to deteriorate. That summer, and forgive me, I can't remember the exact year, when we didn't sell anyone significantly, but we bought Samare and Daka and etc. And it was 54 million pound net spend, for the club. Those players that we signed that summer, it was a bit of a change in recruitment policy. Rather than selling a player for a lot of money and then just spending what we got on other players, we actually went out and spent a load of money. And those players, okay, Samare this season has actually probably earned his wages for the first time, in my opinion, since he's been at the club. But Daka, it's cost us a fortune. It's just never turned up. And it's decisions like that lead to where we are now, for me, anyway.
Absolutely. like Mike said, £5 million on Golding. I think that was more of a PSR stunt to avoid the avoid breaking the rules. I don't think that was as such as we wanted him to buy him to play him. That was just to get us out of financial trouble. The manager bounce worked for 90, 120 minutes. I feel that manager bounce worked for.
I mean, for me, one game, the West Ham game, the first game at home, but even in that game, they had so many chances, West Ham,
They had
and
27 shots, 27.
and
I
you
remember it.
sat there watching it, thinking, how have they not scored? I mean, I know they scored right at the end, but when it really mattered and the game was still up for grabs, it was a bit of we got away with one that night. It wasn't like we beat West Ham significantly or by we played them off the park. We got away with it.
There you go. The council put we're lucky against the Hammers, and even though we did, was it 4-2? We won that game.
3-1, I think, from memory.
3-1.
Jono, I think West Ham scored right at the end when it didn't matter.
They did, yeah. Ruud had the interview after the game, and he alluded to that. Yes, we appreciate all the shots against us, and this is what we need to work on. Obviously, what you're working on isn't working because we concede that many chances each game, and you know what I mean. And Rogers, and here's a comment. Looking back, Rogers was right, but they did bring a load of crap in. Now, this is the only this is the only positive for me of getting relegated. The club must get rid of all the crap. Danny Ward, Vestergaard, Cody, all those sort of, even Luke Thomas, all these players are just sucking the ways out of the club who don't do anything. Need to go away.
I mean, we just mentioned him.
Yeah, Daka as well. Maybe Oliver Skip. All those sort of players.
Well, I mean, there we go. Oliver Skip. From memory, we paid 22 or 25 million pound for him in the summer. I bet he's on a good wage as well. I bet he's not cheap.
No.
Now, who's going to pay anywhere near that for him after the season he's had this year? So no. we're stuck, and it's been exactly the same with Daka ever since we signed him. For the club to push him back out the door, they've almost got to pay someone to take him because of how he's played. So we end up lumbered with these players. We won't get rid of Skip because no one's going to give us make an offer for him that's going to be acceptable.
Yeah, it's just they got trigger happy. They got excited. They were in this position that we were. They got trigger happy. Bought players out of the blue. Didn't really assess them. I don't really think a lot of thought went into it, and then it's just stuck. We're just stuck with the players who are sucking the life. And you can't blame it on the players. You got to blame it on the board. The board signed Van Nistelrooy. The board signed Cooper, then sacked him. The board, the only thing the board did have any control over was Enzo leaving. That's the only thing they haven't had control over since in a long time.
Well, John, I absolutely blame Steve Cooper for Edouard. I think that was a panic signing. I think they were coming to the end of the window. That we were a little bit light in terms of, if you remember, Patson Daka got injured in that friendly in France, and we were looking light up front, and we went out and panic signed him on loan and did a bad deal that's cost the club a lot of money, and he's barely kicked a ball all season, and a lot of money for doing very, very little. The Skip signing, difficult to know whether Cooper was influential in that or not. He looked okay for the first couple of months of the season, but as the season's progressed, he's just wilted, disappeared. Whether that's the strain of the situation we're in or whatever, but respectfully, you're getting paid to turn up and perform. Just do your job. For me, and I absolutely agree with whoever made that comment. That Rogers and the guy that he brought in from Celtic in the recruitment position bought some duds. Let's be honest. They also bought some good players as well, but they did lumber us with some real duds as well.
I just can't remember under Vichai's era any players that I feel who we bought in were duds or stayed at the club long enough. You know what I mean? It was all, as you said, we all alluded to you buy a player or build up a player, sell him for tons of money. Harry Maguire bought him for 20 million, sold him for 80. N'Golo Kante, sold him for God knows how much. We had Mahrez, bought him for £400,000, sold him for God knows how much. All of a sudden,
Wesley Fofana, don't
Wesley
forget,
Fofana, yeah, and
another one.
all of a sudden, we're buying Daka. Can't get rid of him. It's just like play Vestergaard, can't get rid of him. Cody, can't get rid of him. It's just awful, and it feels, yeah, it's just all over the place. It's just all over the place. But we're going to lineup. So I kind of liked the fact that Ruud changed his lineup. I liked the fact that he started Buonanotte and El Canus. I think I just stick with the same. I would keep the exact same lineup as against West Ham. There's nothing more you can do, really.
I mean, well, the first thing to say is some of the young talent that might have been in and around first team contention's all been sent out on loan. All right, there's a couple there, Monga, etc. I know there's a rumor that apparently he's going to Man City now in the summer. Fantastic. There's another young player, talented player we've nurtured, and we're gonna cash in and let him go if that's true. I'd have liked to see Will Alves get a lot more football this season. He's our player. He's Leicester born and bred. He's a talented kid. He's shown his ability in the setup over the last couple of seasons. Give the guy a chance. What's to lose right now? For me, right now, I'd be cutting the manager loose and I'd be getting someone in and saying, right, start building the foundations for getting us promoted next season from the Championship.
Absolutely.
And start the work now. And if that means some of them players need sitting down and saying, you've had almost a whole season to show what you can do. You're not doing it. So respectfully, you're not playing anymore. I'm going to start working with players that do want to invest in next season moving forward. Then I think that really needs doing. And the quicker they get on with that and do that right now, the better. And the more prepared we are to try and get out of the hole we've dug for ourselves this season.
I wish, I'm going to keep going back to this. Ruud had the best opportunity ever to bring in those players in the FA Cup match against Manchester United. We knew we weren't going to win the FA Cup. It was the last chance to experiment with youngsters, maybe play. I know Ben Nelson was injured, but he had two players. I forgot their names, but he had two players lined up to start.
Well, Monga was one of them.
Yep, but one of them wasn't even on the team sheet at all. One of them didn't even play. Casey McAteer, where's he? I know he's featured a few times, but I wish I saw more of him. There are so many good youngsters. All I see on posts is, look how good our youngsters are. Where are they? And Ruud is meant to be the one to improve youngsters.
Well, McAteer's a good shout for the weekend. He's not had a sniff lately. And the bits, the couple of times he's come off the bench recently, he's had an impact. For me, he's the sort of player we should be giving time, ready for next season. Because there'll be a chunk of these, Jono, that will be straight on the phone to their agent already at the minute, saying this is going wrong here. Find me another club next season.
Well, as long as it's Danny Ward's agent, I don't care. So my lineup will be the same. I'm going to go through a few comments quickly. Slimani was bad. This is the same borderline as Musa and Gazelle. Those sort of horrific signings were made at that period of time.
Where's Phil's comment? He brought up some duds from that era. Here we are. Did we just drop this one in? Slimani, Musa. There's a couple. There are some. And any recruitment policy or system is always going to make mistakes. It's not possible. In the sort of situation we're in, by and large, we're not buying ready-made Premier League. We're not Man City. We're not going out and buying ready-made players. Here's an £100 million player. We're not that club. So we're having to take players based on largely playing in more minor leagues than the league we're in, and having a bit of a gamble on the fact that they're gonna have an impact at our club. There are going to be mistakes. What I'm saying is, lately, let's be honest, there's been more mistakes than winners. There's something gone wrong in that way at our club. It's deteriorated in that way. We're not signing smartly. For me,
it's not as well. That's more, for this season is you're hearing stories of the way the parking with the fake steward in the hut, the card, the plastic card you have to pay for. All these things add up to show how bad the club is being ran in relation to the fans, and that if the fans are annoyed of how badly the club's treating us, how do you think the clubs would react to them when they're playing like crap?
Yeah, and then you look at the club's social media feed, and they're trying to peddle executive seats and dinners, and like everything's rosy in the garden. You know, this.
Yeah,
Sometimes you look at what the club's pushing and what's actually going on, and you think, are you detached currently from what's? I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand they're a business, and they've got to try and sell their seats and their dinners and all the rest of it, but it all looks a bit oblivious. And the other thing, for me anyway, is that, especially in recent years, that the communication outward from the club is almost like a wall of silence. You've got all this noise going on around the club, you know, attempted protests and people singing Rudkin songs in the ground, and all this stuff's going on. But the club they just maintain this wall of nothing. They don't ever really, and the only bits you ever really get is when Top writes some program notes and kind of gives a bit of an update.
An inspirational paragraph of how we believe we're good enough to stay up, and it's absolute nonsense. And this is another thing. McAteer was offered to Sunderland. Sorry, Sunderland wanted him for £6 million, and we rejected them. Yet we're stuck. We can't. Said the club struggled to buy players in the January transfer window, which Rude needed to keep the team up. It's absolutely baffling. And one thing really did annoy me is they announced, I think it was when Rude had the meeting, and then they said, they sacked two of the coaches. They announced the first year was 30 quid. I thought that's quite ironic how, they sacked staff, and all of a sudden all these shirts are on discount. It just seems quite ironic.
Well, I'm sure they're stuck with quite a lot of merchandise, because with the way the club's played this season, there's no feel-good factor, which means people don't want to buy shirts and caps and all the rest of it. So I'm quite sure they're lumbered with quite a bit of merchandise this coming through the end of this season. They're going to have to shift cheap.
Where did the money go for Cannon? That's another thing. Buy Cannon last season, didn't play him for half of the season, sold him when Edward was rubbish. Oh, we need a striker. I know. Let's sell our second option.
Yeah, although he's not pulling up massive amount of trees at Sheffield United, is he? I don't think he's scored for him yet, is he? I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's doing that well. He did better for Stoke when he was on loan there, I think, than he's done for Sheffield since he's been there. But you would imagine, and this is a little bit of guesswork here, but if the worst happens this season, it's difficult to see Jamie Vardy wanting to go through another season in the Championship. He's either going to retire or go to Saudi or America or something, probably. Obviously out of contract in the summer. Cannon was the obvious one then to come in and in the Championship and try and lead our line. So that was selling him, for me, a massive bag of nonsense. Couldn't get me around that at all.
It's just it's a massive mess, isn't it? Really, and Paul's comment, they're not bothered about the fans anymore. Just a corporate will sell your ST for double the price on their sellings. Yeah, I agree. Before we go, we'll do score predictions. 3-0 Chelsea. What's yours?
That was quick.
Prove me wrong. Who? 4-0 Chelsea.
Oh, okay. Let's stop you now, because by the time the show ends, you'll be at 10-0. But I'm going to back us to score this weekend. I'm going to stick my neck out. I think we're going to get a goal.
All right, 5-1 then.
Get your Skybox on record. We might actually score. I'm going to go with a defeat. Unfortunately, like most people are, I guess. I mean, Scarlett, they're just dropping in saying 4-0. I'll go for a more honourable 3-1 defeat.
4-1 defeat.
3-1, not 4. 3-1.
If we score a goal, I don't care if we win or lose. We scored. I just want us to score. I've not seen us score a goal in so long. It's been so long since we scored a goal. If we score first, elation.
Yeah, having the lead in the game. Blimey, when was the last? Christ, I suppose Spurs away would be the last time we did that. So yeah, anything to grab onto that's positive to take into the next week will do for me.
I mean, even if a player we've not expected has a really good game, then brilliant. If McAteer does start or plays a game and he has a really good good few minutes. Brilliant. If Mavropanos has a moment of magic, really, really good.
And this will be a popular one with a lot of the people watching tonight. I'd like to see Wout Faz get dropped this weekend.
Absolutely. Well, but I want to see Okoli in the lineup. Okoli has to start. Why? What has Okoli done to deserve being dropped?
Well, I mean, lately, for some reason, with Van Nistelrooy, Faz has become the pick. He's rotated the other one, Vestergaard and Okoli and a little bit of Cody. But Faz seems to, every week, Faz. We're leaking goals like a sieve. Change it. And of course, as Phil reminds us every time we speak to him, change the damn formation. You're playing the same thing to death and it's not working. Do something about it. Change it.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we go, this was the fun when they posted on Facebook the goal of the month. I'm like,
oh yeah, and there's only one goal.
When did we score a goal? They put in the women's goals and
the kids. Yeah.
The kids goals.
Yeah.
I thought that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I mean, how low can we go when you posted the goal of the month? We scored one goal in all of February.
I mean, is that a little bit of ironic humour from someone inside the club, maybe actually having a sense of humour and saying, right, let's make a bit of fun out of this? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they just had to scratch around and try and find some goals that we scored elsewhere. God, Lord knows. But there is some irony in that there's only one goal, so you might as well not have the competition.
It's quite funny. And Tez, it's not Leicester City nil. Change the C to an SH. That's our nickname. But no, I really appreciate all the comments today. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll be live on Sunday for the Famous Foxes Aftermath show, and then we've got Phil's show Money. Well, it's been a mixture of emotions. We've gone back in history, have a nice remembrance of some of Leicester's triumphs, and we've then gone back into reality of how awful we are at the moment. But cheers, Simon, for joining me. Really appreciated.
Thanks, Jono.
And we shall see you all next time.